Let's welcome our guest in studio now, Tal Reshef, Israel-Asia business consultant, and Sam Chester, Chinese economy analyst. Thank you both for joining me this afternoon. Tal, I want to begin with you. As we heard in that report, President-elect Trump wants to scrap the TPP in his first 100 days in office. Let's begin by trying to assess, is there anything stopping him from doing this?
No, nothing stops him. It's a legal issue. He's going to be the president of the United States. It's in his possibility and his power to do so. The only question is it logic? Is it going to serve the interest of America and the rest of the world, which I believe that the answer is quite not very favorable for the understanding of Mr. Trump in world economy.
And looking at that world economy, specifically the Asia-Pacific, what effect could this have on its economy if Trump does go further with this?
Well, I don't think that you're going to see too much of necessarily a negative impact on free trade in Asian economies. As the infomercial before we came in explained, China and others are moving forward, eclipsing U.S. influence in the region. So in the absence of a TPP free trade program anchored by the U.S., instead you're going to have a free trade program anchored by Beijing. So the free trade program between the Asian countries will still be there, and with the countries in Latin America are also partial to the program, but you just won't have the U.S. influence. So the major impact, as Tal explained as well, is U.S. influence declining.
Well, speaking of that alternative, Xi Jinping has been promoting it, an alternative deal, a trade deal to the TPP. Has it been gaining any traction since Trump made this announcement?
Yes, there have been some very interesting comments. If you listen to what was said during the APEC summit in Lima, three leaders of countries, the leader of China, of New Zealand, and of Peru, all the three of them said more or less the same thing. Free trade will continue with or without China, as Sam has just said. So what Trump is going to do is to put the United States in an isolated situation out of the game, leaving the space for China and entering into a dispute with for the rest of the world. And it raises also the question, does he have the power to have such a dispute? He's in a deficit. His country is suffering for many diseases. Still, if you have all those problems and if you have a deficit, you can have a fight with one country, with two countries. But what he wants to do is to fight with the European Union, with China, with Korea, with Japan, with Mexico and Canada. I mean, United States is not the United States of the 50s. It will not stand it good, and he will promote the situation of China, as Sam just said. He's going to give them a free space. It's a gift.
I mean, just to jump in, I think you have to be a little cautious. I think some people are a little bit jumping ahead and saying this is the kind of president Trump will be. We saw, just like Obama in 2008, Trump ran a campaign, and then we're going to see how he acts actually as president. When Trump ran as president, I would say the only policy that actually got through to voters was his position on free trade. It was the position that the free trade deals that have been negotiated for the last 20 years have been robbing the common American. And somehow that did get through, and that was a great marketing pitch on a campaign standpoint. That said, Trump has actually said repeatedly in the last few weeks, he said as early as in August in interviews, he said, I'm not anti-free trade, I'm anti-bad, unfair trade. Now, I think the mistake that Trump makes is, I think, twofold. One, he's misinformed about how much more complex it is to negotiate free trade deals as opposed to real estate deals in the private sector, from which is his background. And two, as we see with Trump in every facet of his activity, he's overly confident in his own ability to do things just simply because he'll be there. His only evidence during the campaign for why free trade deals haven't been good for now has been twofold. One, because of trade deficits, which will be a reality for the U.S. whether it likes it or not. And number two, he simply said American negotiators aren't as good as overseas negotiators, suggesting that if Trump was the negotiator, then everything would be okay. So again, there's very little evidence, there's a lot of misinformation, there's very little understanding here, and therefore I think it's a little bit early in some ways to say, what will he do practically? Perhaps once he gets more informed, perhaps once he sees the complexities involved, he'll actually just adapt the situation rather than this wholesale revolution, which his campaign suggested.
And Tal, briefly, he also mentioned renegotiating NAFTA. Do you think this would further the claim that some are having, as you said as well, to isolate the United States?
Yeah, it's a strange path. I mean, he needs to see the broader view. There's not only the problem of the deficit of America, this same problem meets countries like Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the European Union. All those countries are suffering from the same thing. They are too expensive for producing, so the purchase is going to products of other countries, and this you cannot fight with protectionism.
Well, we'll certainly have to wait and see, as Sam mentioned as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me for this. And that does it for Economy this week. Join us next week. We'll be here.